From basement to buried civilization, one man's groundbreaking find. Let's begin. Jude was enjoying the company of his friends on a Friday night in his basement. He had converted the concrete room into a mancave with darts, a TV, and even air conditioning. But this time would be different. After roughhousing a little too much, one of his friends knocked over a standing heater and chipped the wall. At first, Jude was annoyed, but then he saw it. Jude slowly approached the patch of wall that had been chipped away. But instead of rough flakes, he saw the smooth stone. But it didn't end there. He noticed strange writing. It felt like something out of an Indiana Jones movie. Had he stumbled upon something that had been buried for centuries? He wanted to find out more, but his friends didn't seem to agree. Many of his friends told him that it looked like graffiti to them. It wasn't an ancient script like he thought. But somehow, their speculation only drove him deeper into becoming obsessed. He felt ignored when they only quelled his excitement. He knew he had to prove everybody around him wrong, even if it meant spending a fortune. He bought expensive tools to try and prove himself right. But it took a lot of dedication to get through those thick concrete walls. He nearly gave up. He thought, was he really crazy? After weeks of intensive labor in his basement, it seemed pointless. He didn't seem any closer to finding any more of the ancient writing he had seen, but that's when he broke through. Suddenly, all of the resistance gave way, and Jude topped through his wall. He landed on hard concrete shards and coughed his lungs out. But when he noticed where he had fallen, he knew his life had changed forever. Even though Jude Lawson was technically a citizen of Syria, he always felt like an immigrant. Even though the place was his home, he was often mistaken as a tourist in his own city. He understood the confusion and often surprised locals when he replied to them in their native tongue. But he knew why he was different. It was because of his father. Jude's father was a well-known and respected archaeologist. He had been to dig sites throughout the world before he decided to settle in Syria, but it was for one special reason. He was looking for something big but could never find it. While living in Syria, he found a distraction from his work, a woman who he later married. After their matrimony, Jude was born. He never thought it was strange having a white father, but it was for a lot of others. He remembered his father always being cryptic about his research. After he became a family man, he gave up on his adventures. He still had all of his records in a dusty trunk. At the age of 22, Jude got the worst news of his life. His father passed away in his sleep at the age of 60. His world shattered, but at least he knew his father didn't suffer. His life went on as normal. He moved into a small house and tried moving on. Now a more confident 25-year-old, he hosted parties for his closest friends and got into all sorts of trouble. Jude invited his friends around. It was a good night of shenanigans. But one of his friends decided to wrestle a little too hard, and it would end in damage to his room. But this time would be different. After roughhousing a little too much, one of his friends knocked over a standing heater and chipped the wall. At first, Jude was annoyed, but then he saw it. Jude slowly approached the patch of wall that had been chipped away. But instead of rough flakes, he saw the smooth stone. But it didn't end there. He noticed strange writing. Jude somehow recognized the writing. He shouldn't have been able to, but memories of when he was young flashed before his eyes. He remembered budding his father while he was looking through his notes. On one of his dad's pages, there was writing just like the type he saw in his basement. Something sparked inside of him. He had to find out more. Despite friends' dismissive attitude towards the writing on the wall, Jude possessed a profound determination to prove them wrong. He was willing to invest a considerable amount of money if it meant substantiating his beliefs and disproving those around him. When his father died, Jude inherited a box of his possessions. Something in there could help him. He had not looked in the box since his dad died. He didn't know he could do it. He opened the box. There was a note on top that read, "For my son, maybe one day you'll find the thing that I spent years searching for." But Jude felt emotions rush through him. He pulled the box of relics out and started sorting through it. That's when he found a letter from his father. He took a deep breath and decided to read through it. He knew that it would rip open old wounds, but there was more to it than just words on paper. He had a message for his son. "My darling son, I always saw the same spark of curiosity inside of you that I used to have when I was young. You need to nurture that curiosity and let it guide you. I never found the last relic I was looking for, but I found something better, a family. Remember to have adventures while you are young before you find the ultimate treasure." Jude's tears stained the paper. He knew what he had to do. Jude managed to find the old writing that he had remembered seeing. He looked through the notes but got frustrated. There were no translations in any of the notes. This meant that he had no idea what the writing on his basement wall meant. But at least he now knew that it wasn't graffiti. Motivated, he pursued further. He borrowed expensive tools from his work, and he found the blueprints to his house to see what parts of the basement were the foundations. He got home and rolled out the dusty plans. The blueprints were very old, but that's when he noticed something peculiar. The wall where he found the ancient script did not show in the blueprint. There seemed to show a gap there. Was this the clue he needed? Jude had been working for weeks with nothing to show for it. He was beginning to have his doubts. He wondered if he was doing anything productive or just ruining his basement. But after weeks of feeling doubtful, all of the resistance gave way, and Jude topped through his wall. He landed on hard concrete shards and coughed his lungs out. But when he noticed where he had fallen, he knew his life had changed forever. Jude was in a dark crawl space. He pulled his flashlight out of his tool belt and saw something that made his heart race. The writing he saw was all over the inner walls of the space he had fallen into. But there was so much more than that. He pointed his flashlight ahead and only saw darkness. How deep did this place go? He felt almost kindred with his father as he slowly pushed forward, the prospect of adventure keeping him going. The cavern was deep. He was unsure where it led, or after a few turns, if he would find his way out. It was amazing, but he had no idea what he was looking at. So he left the area to contact someone he knew could help him. It was an old colleague of his father's, but he had no idea the man was going to sell him out. When his father's friend arrived, Jude opened his door, but it was not his dad's friend. He was face to face with a man who looked like some kind of authority figure. He introduced himself as Abraham Hassan, a representative of the Safeguarding the Heritage of Syria and Arab Project, or Shoshi for short. He told Jude that what he had stumbled upon was a part of Syria that the government wanted to protect and conserve it. The representative explained that what he had found was a lost city, a part of ancient Syria that was built over many centuries ago. They had already found parts of the city in other areas, but none this detailed and in a residential area. The Syrian government compensated Jude for the value of his property and made it an archaeology site. The government hired Jude to help in the excavation as they were well aware of his father. Jude had discovered a town called Zel Taydan, dating back from between 4000 BC and 2000 BC. The town's location was at the crossroads of major, ancient trade routes in Mesopotamia that followed the course of the Euphrates River Valley. Jude found his father's lost city. Incredibly, his father had been living above it for years. Disclaimer: to protect the privacy of those depicted, some names, locations, and identifying characteristics have been changed and are products of the author's imagination. Any resemblances to actual events, places, or persons, living or dead, are entirely coincidental.